Shabbat Shalom, everybody, and welcome once again to Pasadena Jewish Temple and Center. Really delighted to celebrate Shabbat with all of you, and especially the Levine family. It is a long time coming. I want to say that I was on my way over here tonight, and the bar mitzvah family told me that I had a kippah waiting for me, and I had this, and I was looking forward to getting. I love collecting these b'nai mitzvah kippot. And then I have to go buy ties that match them. But I love these. It's for me, it's a memento of the time that I spend with our young people developing these divrei Torah. And you'll hear Jared's tomorrow. I'm going to talk tonight. Jared's going to talk tomorrow. But what I was really hoping, and my wish came true, it's a collector's edition. Because the date on there says March 21st, 2020. Jared's was the first of our B'nai Mitzvah celebrations, and we had a lot of them scheduled for last spring. But Jared's was the first that was kind of put on hold for a little while as we were all starting to figure out what the world would look like and how we would show up for it. And that decision, I believe, was made on a Thursday, the day prior to his bar mitzvah. And so for me, I love all the students that I work with, but this one has special meaning to me because that delay was merely a delay. It was not an end. It was not a negation of all the work that he'd put in, but it was him making a choice and setting an example to do the right adult thing for all of his family and for all of this community to take this time. And we made sure that it would be on this week's Torah portion, so we wouldn't have to learn too much more Torah. Maybe he learned a little bit more Torah. And you're going to hear more about the Torah that he learned that he's going to teach you tomorrow. But I just want to acknowledge this moment as we've all been thinking in anniversary or yahrzeit terms in the past week. Tomorrow, Jared's going to talk to you about skill and what it means to have skill, for a person to have skill. And he has some great insights. Maybe it's not as simple as you think, what it means to have skill. What I want to talk about is how God feels about skill, or at least how we can deduce God feels about skill from this Parashat. A question arises when we read Vayakhel-Pekudei. Haven't I heard this story before? In fact, I see some of our adult B'nai Mitzvah in the Zoom audience, and they're like, haven't I told this story before? It seems like just 3 weeks ago in the Torah, in Parashat Truma, they were going through painstaking detail about all the different ways in which people were going to get together and apply their ingenuity and build this Mishkan down to the finest detail. Like how many tab A's there were in slot B's. Like IKEA has nothing on this section of the Torah. You know, all that, like it's made of wood and some of it's made of silver and some of it's made of gold. And here's the recipe for incense, in case you were wondering. And then in the next week, it said, here's the finest level of detail of color and trim and spangles on the priest's clothes. Haven't we heard all of this? So much of Vayakhel-Pekudei is just saying, hey, remember that plan that we made? This is us fulfilling the plan. And they go through the whole thing again, down to the finest detail. In Truma, it says, you shall do X, Y, Z, and then goes through a whole lot. And in Vayakhel-Pekudei, it says, and the people got together and did X, Y, and Z. Why is it important to repeat this? Is the Torah just repeating itself? What is this, Deuteronomy? No. The Torah, our sages believe, is incredibly, perfectly parsimonious. It doesn't say anything that it doesn't have to. There are no extra words. So why go through the whole thing again the way it goes through the whole thing? If I can digress for a moment, and when haven't I? I was thinking about these books that I used to read when I was a little kid. These are some of the first books I remember reading. As I've said before, I really learned to read from Mad Magazine. But when I first started seeing words, my favorite picture books, and I wore these things out, were Richard Scarry books. Did anybody have Richard Scarry books? There were these big, beautiful picture books, with big pages, and it was just like a regular tableau, a scene from the street, or a scene from the inside of a building, or just a big panoramic shot of people going about their lives. Only it wasn't people; it was animals. There was like a different animal. It was a very diverse crowd. I'll say there was almost like not two of the same animal. Noah would be shocked. But every animal had a different job, and it said, "This is a policewoman. This is a mail carrier. This is a janitor. This is a grocery delivery person." That's come back in style. And everybody had a job to do, and it showed how people did their job. And I think my favorite book is "What Do People Do All Day?" That was the name of the book. What do people do all day? And it showed people in their different careers applying their diverse sets of skills in a bunch of different circumstances. And that's how, from my little patch of carpet in East Texas, I learned all the different jobs that people had, how the world beyond my visibility worked. And I carried that with me into a place where I grew up, and it didn't look like that. There's a web commentator named Merlin Mann. He wrote about technology back in the aughts. And he said if Richard Scarry wrote that book today, what you would see, every single page would look about the same. It would look like a low-rise office building with 100 people sitting behind cubicles on their computer. And one would be labeled accountant, and one would be labeled attorney, and one would be labeled author, and one would be labeled regional manager of grocery logistics, because so much of the world's work had been, the touchy-feely stuff had been automated or outsourced. And in this person's experience, and increasingly in my experience, a diverse group of careers could work from cubicles on computers, all accomplishing different things, but the work all looked the same. Until it didn't. I think this time has, for all of its downs, had some ups of making us grateful, had some ups of making us realize all that it takes from other people for us to live our lives. Like I said, delivering groceries, which I didn't grow up in New York City. I grew up in the middle of nowhere. We would drive an hour to go get groceries. Delivering groceries is back in style. There are people who have never left their work throughout this year, never left their place of work. I hope that when we get into that light that appears to be at the end of the tunnel, we don't forget and assume that everybody's life is just like ours. That now that our life is good again, everybody's life is as good as it always was, because that, for some, was never true. I have a new appreciation for how the food gets to my table. I hope I don't forget that. But what does that have to do with Vayakhel-Pekudei? What are they doing in the busy town of the Mishkan? What do holy people do all day? Professor Nechama Leibovitz takes a look at this tableau, this great repetition of all the ways in which people applied their skill for one holy purpose. And she calls it the sanctification of all work. We spend the next book talking a lot about the priests. Leviticus is coming up next week. I have mixed feelings about that, to be honest. There's some good parts. There's some, let's say, sacrificey parts. But we spend a lot of time on the priests. Before we do, I think this is the Torah telling us, don't lose sight of everybody else. The priests are important, Sure, but they're not the only important ones, and they're not even the most important ones. Vayakhel-Pekudei takes pains to say, you don't have work for the priests to do if the skilled incense makers aren't making incense, if the skilled carpenters aren't building the Mishkan, if the weavers aren't making the clothes and the fabric of the tents. It takes everybody. It takes all kinds of skill to create a holy community. And I hope I never forget my new appreciation for all the work that's gone into making this community holy over the last year. Our sisterhood serving and welcoming people, our men's club serving and welcoming people in ways that are somewhat different from sisterhood. You'll see both representatives from both of them tonight. Our MAC, our caring community, never stopped helping people. Our social justice committee never stopped working toward a more just world. Our teachers of Torah never stopped teaching. Our meditation teachers have probably been teaching more than ever. And Lord knows we all need it more than ever. All the people that make this community possible, all of our lay leaders who bring their skill in administrative work and legal work and financial expertise and liturgical skill and a little bit of rabbinics and educating our children. All the people who contribute to this community are holy. That's the point, I think, of Vayakhel-Pekudei. It takes each one of us at our calling. None of us have to be priests. Thank goodness we've got a few rabbis in this community. I think that's probably enough. Everybody here is valuable. Everybody here is holy, and they've been working every day for the last year. They never quit. So let me conclude by saying thank you and keep it up, because we still need you. Shabbat Shalom. Thank you for joining us at PJTC.